Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
From sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Recover You.
And welcome. Hi. Hi. Welcome.
Welcome.
Yes. Welcome to.
I want to say welcome room. One more time.
I'm going to describe for everybody our room. So we have this podcast room that we put in, and it's really, really cool. And so on the wall, we probably have, I don't know, maybe like 10 to 12 soundproofing squares to provide this rich, luscious sound that we get.
10 to 12 out of the 300 that we have
then
that we haven't put up yet.
Bag on the ground that has 450 soundproofing squares, which probably actually do dampen the sound a little bit.
Yeah, we have a rug in here.
But it's certainly the lazy way to do it. So just leave them in the bag, throw them in the room, in the corner, and then you're good.
We've made progress, though. We have put some on the wall.
Yep.
And then we have a little Cocoa Bean, our dog, in her little doggy bed.
Yep.
Down at our feet.
Yep.
And
the cat may come and go, so you may hear the meowing and whatever. But here we are.
And then we have our podcasting equipment set up on the table that's built into the wall. So
and there's a Kylene in here, one each. Yep, there you are.
One each?
Yeah, that's it's a military term. It's like inventory, like Black Hawk, one each.
Oh, okay. There's one Kylene and one Patrick.
Yes.
Now each. You know, in case you didn't.
One each, Patrick. Yep.
Well, welcome, Patrick.
Hey, what's going on? Hi.
Okay, so today we are going to talk a little bit more about healthy sexuality after betrayal and infidelity. So these are things that we've touched on in previous episodes. In the past, in recent episodes, we actually discussed healthy sexuality and unhealthy sexuality, and we sort of went through that list with Pure Desire. So I may just, when we kind of get started, I may just read the healthy sexuality side of it. And then one of the things that we really wanted to highlight specifically within this idea is the idea of consent. And I think it's really an interesting topic in my mind, because I think about the generation that I was raised in, and specifically, so I'm an older millennial, but then raised an older millennial that was specifically raised in like really deep conservative evangelical culture. So like that really deep like purity culture sort of. Yeah. So my message of sexuality may not have been the same message that most millennials were getting. I don't know, but I know that there were a lot that were impacted kind of like I was. But what I find really interesting is Gen Z, which is more Keegan's age. They had like the I think the school system, but like his generation as a whole seemed way more open in talking about the idea of consent. Like it was a really big thing in their generation, this idea of consent. And you know, it should be a really big deal for everyone. But I just think it was talked about more for whatever reason in his generation.
I never heard anything about consent growing up.
Right. Yeah. And so there's a lot that we can kind of talk about within this topic, right? In terms of how this is or is not talked about in faith culture, but particularly how, beyond not being talked about, it's actually in some ways discouraged, because there's this idea that if you are a couple that is getting married within the Christian religion, there's there are many people within the faith community that would tell you, inappropriately so, twisting scripture, I would say, because they use scripture to say this. So if somebody's listening going, wait, that's a Bible verse. It is, but it's being misused. Well, where they will say your body is your spouse's and vice versa. And the reason I say that's twisted is because then it's used to say, well, I can do whatever I want because like your body is mine, right? And that's completely the opposite of like the intention is supposed to be that, you know, everything that we see in terms of human to human interaction and marriage in the Bible and respecting other people is all about mutuality. It's about, there's a lot about service. There's a lot about servant leadership, right? If you're going to be if we wanted to get into the head of the household stuff, it's like, okay, well, what does that actually mean? You have to like serve your wife and like be kind and like provide for her needs and like make her feel physically, mentally, and emotionally safe in the household and respect her autonomy and her agency, right? And so all of that's going to go into consent. And so it's just a really interesting thing, because I think in the area in which I think it should be talked about so much, which is in the church, of like, how do we love each other, and how do we grow into mature, kind human beings? And then if we're going to be married, how do we treat our spouses with respect? I feel like that should be, if we're trying to be Christ-like, if we're trying to work on our spirituality and become more like God, who we know is love and truth and light and hope and all of these good things, then we should be talking about things like healthy sexuality and consent and like the positive aspects. And unfortunately, I think we either get nothing at all, or sometimes we get really, really harmful messages. And so I think it's important that we have episodes like this where we kind of talk about it. And I'm really glad to hear things when I hear things like Gen Z are talking about it more. I think that tends to be really important and encouraging in a lot of ways. And a couple other things that they are doing less: they're drinking less and they're looking at pornography less. It's more accepted in Gen Z. And this is very like, it's stereotyping, right? Like we're doing it by generation, not by like, I'm sure there's still a lot of people that have problems with it for sure.
People getting addicted today.
Absolutely.
And stuff like that.
But like as a culture, that generation has recognized, and I think that's because of the generation above, right? That's going, hey, like, technology came out during my generation, the millennial generation, right? And during my lifetime. And so that's when all of these pornography addictions would like skyrocket, because now there's easy access, and now there's technology is addicting and pornography is addicting. And now we have this cascade of like everything's addicting, and, and it's free and it's everywhere and all this kind of stuff, right? So my generation like got addicted. And then Keegan's generation is like, whoa, we're realizing like this is an addiction and this can actually be problematic, and we're going to talk about it. And they're more open to that being a problem. So it's just interesting to see like how cycles happen and different conversations and different generations happen, and the reasoning that might be, there's always these pendulum swings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
I think each generation sometimes is a reaction to the previous, and with everything. So it's, there's going to be a COVID impact on people that's going to come in, and probably the generation that comes after them will suffer from it, because it'll be the kids, and then another generation will solve it in a way as a collective.
Respond to it, whatever that means,
Right, yep.
Yeah, so it's just, I think healthy sexuality is one of those things that the conversation has shifted in the past couple decades. And in a lot of ways, I think it's been positive. There's more people publicly talking about how pornography is dangerous to the individual, for their brain, for their mental health, for their physical health, for any sort of relationships, for society as a whole, expectations. And so, when we're talking about healthy sexuality, I think all of these things come into play, right? Because obviously we're going to take a little bit of the approach of healthy sexuality after infidelity, healthy sexuality after addiction, healthy sexuality after betrayal. And there's like 1,000 layers that go into this. So I was raised with purity culture. I came into our relationship with some prongs kind of in my life from that, right? Some beliefs and how that impacted previous decisions before you and I got together. And then we got together, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is like this fairy tale romance, right? And then I felt so great about our relationship. And then 10 years in, or whatever it was, boom, sexuality was hit tremendously hard. And then my safety in that area was taken away. And then we had to sort of create safety and trust and rebuild, and then go, okay, well, but what is healthy? What are we actually working towards? Because I always try to encourage people to have some sort of definition, some sort of vision, some sort of clarity around like, what is it that we're working for? Because if we don't have that, and like I was just mentioning, like coming from a history of pain in sexuality, or a history of maybe not talking about healthy sexuality, whatever it is, if we didn't get clear on like what is it that we're actually hoping to achieve individually and as a couple in this area, then I don't know where we would end up in terms of maybe falling back into good enough, or unsatisfied, or frustrated, or maybe an unhealthy pattern, or whatever it is, right? And so,
Well,
we're going to talk about that today.
What was really interesting in my thought pattern. So after discovery, obviously you didn't feel safe. I felt, and we've talked about this, but I was completely okay becoming a celibate monk, and and a lot of that was born out of I didn't want to hurt anyone again, as particularly you, and there was a lot of I didn't believe that I was worthy of being loved in that way again. Right. And so because of that, you had to, and I give you a lot of credit for this, is you had to kind of carry that torch. I've always talked about you carrying the torch, is like you wanted to keep trying. You wanted to keep going. You wanted to keep, and those were very, very kind of, what was interesting is they were very scary in a lot of ways, but they were very connecting in a lot of ways as we tried to reestablish physical intimacy. And it's no secret, we've talked about this. It took us over 3 years to reestablish physical intimacy.
It was almost 3 years. I think it was like somewhere in between 2.5 and 3. But then we built on that, obviously, because that was like getting to just even...
Right.
Engaging in that way.
Yeah. So it was really hard for me being somebody like what resonated with me very early on. You talk about consent, was because you didn't know my patterns and I wasn't honest with you about what I had done. Coming in, to the relationship, that I had robbed you of consent. And that consent was about you making a completely informed decision on whether to be with me or not, right? Had I come to you and said, hey, I struggled with this through this accident, you may have been very understanding, but in that moment, you may have been like, yeah, but I'm out of here. I don't really want to deal with that, and that's perfectly okay, but I robbed you of that. So what I wanted to make sure was, and that really resonated with me, is I wanted to make sure that I didn't rob you of any consent again,
right?
As we went through it. So I was super careful, and I was very much, in a lot of ways, I did not pursue. I did not, I was very much, it was safer for me in my emotional capacity, my limited emotional capacities where I was as I healed, to just shut it all down. Now, I will say that the one thing that I thought is a huge benefit, and I think every addict should do this, is you should have a period of 90 days where you do not engage in any way. You do not self-pleasure.
You're not touching anything. You're not engaging in anything.
Yeah. And if you want to focus on the partner, that's okay. But you are completely shut down for 90 days. Now, the important part behind that is to shut down that brain pattern. Allow your brain time, because most of us addicts are doing it, every day, multiple times a day. There's that dopamine hit is alive and active. So being able to shut it down at least for a period of 90 days would turn into longer for us. But I always look back on that, and I didn't have this mindset that we were going to hit 91 days and then be like, woohoo, like I knew that was not the case. But it was really, it did a couple things. Number one, it allowed me to show up for you safely. It actually taught me that I didn't need sex. It's okay to want sex, but I think society, there's a lot of, like I did not grow up in purity culture, right? I grew up in a very sexualized society, 70s, 80s, 90s, and it was music. And I was pretty secular. I did go to church, but I was pretty secular, and it was very sexualized. And a lot of it is, the messages that you receive as a boy, and then, through that time frame, is that it's an absolute need for men. And then I think, there are some other, what was it, 72 hours that came out of the evangelical community, that like men needed every 72 hours, which is a complete and utter falsehood. You can go the rest of your life and not have it. Yeah. And it's really okay. You're not going to, you're going to be fine. And you may have sexual urges and stuff like that, but your body either absorbs it or whatever. Like, it's okay. You know what I mean? And so I think that's, and I knew that logically. Like, I knew it's a want, not a need, but it's important to kind of show that to you. It's like,
well, it's interesting actually to me, because I never got this impression of like entitlement around sexual behavior or like pressure ever. But what's interesting is kind of what you're saying is like you did somewhere have this belief that like it was a thing, like more of a need, or maybe you had absorbed that to some extent. So it's interesting as I'm thinking back, because I'm like, you never put that pressure on me, but maybe your answer to not putting pressure on me was to just, this is not nice for me to maybe put this on her, so I'll just go out into this other world and do it myself and engage in this acting out and keep it separate from our relationship.
Probably. I mean, I'd have to think through that, but that linkage is probably there, and so, but it's because
there's a disconnect, is my point, and I'd like you to go into this a little bit. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure we hit this. If you had absorbed that in culture and you didn't really have an issue like early on with pornography, you weren't like morally against it. It kind of became a problem in your life, and then eventually you sort of became convicted of it, and stuff like that. But there was never this there's never this transition or overlap into our life ever, where I don't know how I'm trying to. Why? I guess the question is, why did you never? Because I feel like you would never. Why was that never an option for you to pressure me in any way?
I think, deep to the root, and you and I talked about this yesterday in one of our conversations or 2 days ago, like I always wanted to be a nice guy. I really, really wanted to be a nice guy. And I think there's a detachment that you get in pornography, not necessarily not being a nice guy, but it is nameless, faceless, right? In a lot of ways, right? It creates a very harmful detachment to it. So like, at least with you, I was like, well, if you're sick, I want to take care of you. I don't want to sexualize you while you're, and not every man is like this, just to be clear, and there's some stories we've heard that are a little rough, but I wanted to provide for you. That was my whole goal. I wanted to be a great husband. I wanted to provide for you. I wanted you to always feel safe, but the distorted part of me, didn't feel, and that was the other realization that came after discovery was, when you consume pornography, you are victimizing these people. You are objectifying these people. Now, granted, yes, you can't go, that person can't look at you and go, you just objectified me. That connection is completely broken, right? Because it's so distant, it's on a screen, whatever. But you are doing that, and you're feeding the industry, which ends up victimizing people and all of these different things. But in the world of looking at pornography, that detachment is so far away. So I think in my mind, in my mind, it was like, it was that detachment. Certainly when I look at you, I know you, I love you, I want to provide for you. All I wanted to do was care for you. And so that was, it was an easy thing for me if you said not tonight or I'm not feeling good or whatever. And so, and that, what I was talking about is post-discovery, that goes into overdrive for me, because I'm like, you're like, I'm so sad tonight. And really deep down, you're like, I wish you would just lean in and kiss me. I'm like, you're sad, I'm out, downstairs, goodbye. You're like, no, that's not what I meant. And so, but I'm trying to provide this high level of safety. Whereas in the pornography world, there's so much detachment and then subsequent denial to it that it prevents you from seeing the human cost of it, not only to them, but also to you, that, because you're consuming. And that is such a danger to the human psyche when you consume other humans.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know that I would say it prevents you. I would say it makes it easier for you to step into denial.
Absolutely, yeah.
It makes it easier because they're not physically in the room with you. But that's one of the things that I've said in a video somewhere is the fact that we can justify doing something with another individual because there's a screen in between us, as opposed to doing something with an individual in the same room without a screen and somehow think it's different.
Right.
Goes to the heart of why this is so problematic.
Yeah.
It's not different.
It's not different.
If you went somewhere and there was a woman in a corner and you guys were doing the same things that you were doing, in pornography or in cyber sex or, whatever, the same exact behaviors, but you just had 20 feet apart from you, but you're in the same room, there's no difference. But somehow we qualify it as a different thing because there's a screen, and it's like, that is like the epitome of denial. That is it right there. Yeah. So, well, we talked about a lot of negative healthy sexuality as we get started here. But yeah, so one of the things you mentioned is that sex is not a need. And I think we have to talk about that because when we're talking about healthy sexuality, when you think about health, and we talk about this idea that like anything that comes from fear is going to be negative, right? So when we're talking about health, though, I would say it's like this freedom from things that control you. Freedom from external things that maybe in our past you have felt control you. So for example, recovery and health from addiction means that addiction and those behaviors no longer control you. Right. Health in sexuality means that sex no longer controls you. And there's this whole avenue of humanity that thinks sex is a need, which allows them to act in ways where sex actually controls their brain, and sex controls their behavior, and sex controls their choices. Because if you think it's a need is like air. Like, if you can't breathe, you're going to gasp for air. If you are dehydrated, you're going to guzzle down water. You do not need sex. Sex is not a need. You will not die without it. To your point, you could live every single day for the rest of your life and be absolutely fine.
And I was prepared to.
I was too. There were so many times.
Let's go. Yeah.
You and I had these conversations where I was like, honestly, I could turn off my sexuality. And there were times where I was like, that is so much easier than like working through this.
That's right.
And like getting to the point where it is healthy and it's happy and connected. And because that's hard. And so we do want to take a minute and just like acknowledge like that, the reality of that. Yeah. But health, I want to just kind of get back to that idea that healthy sexuality or health in general is this generalized freedom from feeling like things control you. And so that's freedom from fear. That's freedom from coercion. That's freedom from pressure. That's freedom from shoulds. You know, people say, stop shoulding on yourself. We will put pressure on ourselves. Should. I should do this. I should do this. I should do this. Well, what if it just is okay that things are the way they are right now? What, like, if you think about, you just talked about the 90 days, like people have to understand that going through the 90 days for some people is like withdrawal from any other drug. So like, what if things are just okay that you're going to be uncomfortable for 90 days? Yeah. What if it's just okay that you feel lonely? What if it's just okay that like it's maybe physically uncomfortable for a while? What if it's okay that you feel like you had described like during your 90 days, you would feel empty. And that was like your version of withdrawal. You didn't have like some people may feel anger.
I never had cravings or anything like that. Like that didn't.
Right.
Sometimes
well, I would say that's a craving actually.
Well, yeah.
Because normally if you hadn't been aware and super like because you pretty quickly we're doing things like journaling and the faster scale and stuff like, we mentioned journaling.
I didn't though. You did.
You're welcome. Yeah. Faster scale. So you were checking in on your emotions right away. So had you not had those tools or had you had the tools and not been using them, that could have easily been a craving that without the awareness that you were applying very early on, that you would have gone, well, this feels uncomfortable. I'm going to go to my old pattern. But because you were aware, you were able to name that as, I have this emotion and it feels empty, whatever that is. I just feel emptiness. It feels weird. And because you were able to recognize it and talk about it, you then did nothing about it.
Right.
So I think it's important, right? So it's like this idea of like with health, what if things are just okay? Like what if I tell you all the time, like I had an overwhelming day or I had a stressful day or today I feel a little more activated or today was a great day or today I'm tired, right? Like whatever's happening in my life at the time or in my body, right? But I've lived enough life at this point and gone through enough roller coasters and stress and trauma and all these kinds of things to know if I have a day where I'm a little more activated, I know that is not going to consume me. I know that tomorrow or the next day I will be fine. I know that there will be a period of time in the future where everything will be fine. I know that if I'm tired, I've been through this enough with my physical health. I know that if I'm tired, it really frustrates me and I'm like, man, I wish I wasn't. But I know that that will go away, and I will, again, at some point tomorrow or 2 weeks from now or a month from now, have another burst where I have a lot of energy and I feel really, really good, and everything will be fine. So I think health is coming back. Again, I could allow the fatigue to control me. I could allow, all of these things to kind of come in and have some sort of like pressure on my life. But health, I think, really is coming to a place where it's like, okay, I'm existing and things happen.
Yeah. Right.
Can we be okay with that?
That's right.
And that thing does not have to control or dictate how I choose to behave or the choices I choose to make or how I choose to interact with another human being that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, we talk about emotional intelligence, that the healing process is a growth in emotional intelligence. And at least that's just I don't know if that's clinical or that could be studied or whatever. That's just my belief. I think you grow in empathy, and I think empathy, and maybe they aren't related, but I believe they very much can be. And so if you grow in health, then what should happen is your desire to not hurt, not harm, but to help and honor should grow as you heal, right? Anybody in your life, right? Coworkers, kids, parents, grandparents, spouse, especially. And so within that not harming thing, if you're not going to harm, well, then how do you do that from a physical intimacy standpoint? That's where consent really, really comes in.
Yeah. So I don't get the impression with like your personality that even before addiction or before, I don't think you ever would have like pressured somebody into sex. Or like even in your previous marriage, like I feel like I don't think that would really be your personality. But can you maybe talk about your personal experience going through life, how sexuality or your relationship to your sexuality and your sexual experiences has changed maybe pre-addiction, although I wouldn't say that was like a healthy place, through addiction and then after recovery? Like how has that evolved for you over time, do you think?
That's a big question. So I was not very sexually active with my first girlfriend in high school. As a matter of fact, I resisted it for a long, long time. I was somewhat afraid of it. I was afraid of the concept. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to get her pregnant because I still wanted to go to West Point. And like, that was really, it was like but I think that's what I would say, but I think I was very uncomfortable with it, right? It was one of those like, you want to, but you don't really want to. And it was kind of a kind of thing. And then I didn't date anybody for a long period of time before I met my first wife, 5-ish years or whatever. And, I didn't really pursue it, at all. So I would say it wasn't really at the forefront of my mind. I had a lot of friends who seemed to get a lot of girls, or at least that's what they said. Sometimes I'm like, is that really the truth or not? Because guys tell stories, but, and I'm sure some did, but I wasn't like, I remember I would get annoyed if I was hanging out with some friends and we went to a bar and then they wanted to go, quote unquote, pick up girls. I was like, no, I just want to sit here and drink beer and watch football, you know what I mean? Or watch sports and hang out and talk. So it was never a pursuit for me. But I think that kind of ties into what was my addictive patterns. It was very much a private thing. You know what I mean? It was like I think it's the same reason why I didn't objectify women in bikinis in Miami. It just wasn't like, something that entered my mind. I think and then of course meeting you and being like, wow, this is amazing. And it's very like the one thing you taught me that nobody ever did, I think, it's not like I had all these people, but you really demonstrated to me that you wanted me because of me. And I'm probably going to get emotional here thinking about it. And what has been, I guess, so beautiful in the recovery process is it's kind of returned to that. And so, but now it's like, you really want me because of me in light of everything I've done? You know what I mean? And so like it was easier to rationalize before you knew about my addiction because I was like, well, outwardly I'm a pretty cool dude. You know what I mean? It's not like that.
You're a cool dude.
But now it's like, okay, well, but I did all of this. And so, and it took a while, but it was an amazing, it's been an amazing thought process for me to be. And like I say, I think that is still something that kind of sits with me a little bit, is and I do feel more comfortable. Like I'm more comfortable now in my sexuality with you. Yeah. I'm very comfortable. I think, like I don't at all feel like it's a need. Like when we connect physically, I don't feel, I mentioned this to you last night, I don't feel afraid to say, hey, I'm not feeling it tonight, or shutting down or whatever. I do worry, like, I don't want you to take the wrong message, because there's been a lot
rejection.
There's been a lot of harmful messages that came from my behavior towards you. I don't want you to feel, but I also know that sometimes it's just not happening, right? And sometimes it's okay to stop, and it's okay to whatever. And so, what has been really healing for me I think your question is how has it changed, is it's really not about performance. You certainly want it to be pleasurable, right? It's okay to desire that and say, hey, I'd like to be engaged in a sexual experience that is full of consent with my wife that is pleasurable, right? It's okay to say that.
That's a good thing.
You're talking about a vision, but it's also okay to, in that moment, to say, it's actually not. We're having a hard time connecting. I'm not feeling connected. I've got some anxiety. Or man, I got to get up at 3 a.m. tomorrow. It's now 10:15.
Right.
I'm starting to get anxious about getting a good night's sleep.
Right.
Do you mind? Like, I think previous to discovery, I would have squelched that anxiety. I would have just pushed through. And so, when you do that, even when it's almost like you're robbing yourself of consent, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think that's been the big thing I've learned is like, hey, it's okay to go, hey, I'm not there today. You know what I mean? I'm really not there today. And so, I think there's been so many nice things that has come out of that, recovery that you can be a full human being in physical sexuality, where you can say, yes, I want this. Oh, you don't? Okay, that's fine. I'm okay if you don't. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, just because we want something doesn't mean we have to have it right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like right now, I would love to go eat a ho-ho, but I'm not, because you know what I mean? Like I don't, because I don't want. I've lost weight. I feel good. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's okay to understand that it's just it. And I think you're right that understanding that sexuality becomes a more manageable. It becomes kind of integrated in a lot of ways. Like you just go, hey, I can move through and in and out of moments, and you can call me at noon and go, hey, when you get home tonight, what do you think about? And I go, ooh, that sounds great. And then I get home and you're not feeling well, or you got a call from from somebody about something that was really hard, and you're off, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to go, hey, what about you called me at noon today? And you're like, but I'm not feeling well. I'm like, yeah, well, I've been thinking about it this whole time. And, you're like, well, leave me alone. You know what I mean? So yeah,
that's disconnecting.
Yeah, you can shut down. You can fire it back up. You can say, I don't feel well. You can do all of those things, and it's really okay. And so, like I said, I think you have really shown me how to. And maybe I've helped you. I don't know, but it's like you've really shown me how to be okay, kind of saying what you want. You know what I mean? And like I think that the thing that comes to mind for me as I think through this is we really haven't. I think like sometimes you'll be like, hey, what do you want to do? And I'll be like, oh, I just want to connect with you.
Yeah. And
so, whatever that means, you know what I mean? I think when you're in a safe relationship, it's like whatever that means. And so it could mean that you're cuddling each other. And I don't want to get graphic in any way, but it's like when it feels right, it feels right. And it feels right to receive. It feels right to give.
And talking about consent, it feels right to both people.
That's right. That's right.
It's so important. I was thinking about this recently, just this idea of consent. By the way, thank you that was very nice.
Did I answer the question?
Yes, I think you did.
Okay.
And I can come back to, I think you've ironically taught me some things about healthy sexuality before everything came out. So we can come back to that. But
that's, it's funny when you say that though, but that's a really good example of parts, right? There's a part of me that was very safe for you, but there was a part of me that was an addict.
Yeah.
And so the addict part really hurt you. The safe part really helped you.
Yeah.
But what we had to do is we had to get to the point where we could integrate all those parts again in a really, really safe way and move forward. Did I just rob your thought?
No, that was perfect.
Yeah.
I love also that you're talking about this like as a man, as a recovered addict, because so many things that you are saying are what I would like say is often the opposite side. But the reality is it's true for both. So when you're talking about being able to say no and not feeling it today, or being able to use your voice more, a lot of times we're talking about that in the context of the betrayed partner. And so I think you just gave a voice to like a lot of people, regardless of the side that they're on. You know what I mean? So that's really important. Yeah, no, but I think, the example that always comes to my mind is the whole women in bikinis in Miami. Because when we met, you were like, what's the big deal? Spaghetti straps? Women in bikini, like what, and so
and that wasn't an act. Like
right,
actually, I've always felt that way.
Not knowing that you had something, and at the time, maybe it wasn't like full blown addiction, but like in the background, not knowing that you had something like in the background, that might have, challenged my willingness to accept that as healthy. I just received that. And I was like, oh, that just sounds like so much more healthy than like a lot of these other concepts that have been thrown at me throughout my life. And so I took that and I was like, well, that is healthy. You should just be able to see things in the world that are normal and be able to move through and not do anything about it. Like that sounds healthy to me. And so that was interesting. And then also your just as I was mentioning earlier, your interactions with me were always, I never felt any pressure. Never at any point in our relationship did I ever feel any pressure to do anything, or, if I was tired or, whatever. There was never any sort of pressure. And to an extent, there's always been a conversation. Now, I think the dialogue has improved tremendously after discovery and after a lot of what we've learned. And we openly talk about a lot more now than maybe we did before. But even before discovery and before we were kind of forced into maybe deeper conversations, I think we always talked about stuff. And you would always know how I'm feeling, or if I was struggling with something, or whatever. Yeah. And so I never felt in our relationship like I couldn't be honest about who I was or what I was feeling, or what maybe would feel uncomfortable or was a no for me, or I never felt anything like, oh well, I have to do whatever so that Patrick loves me, or anything like that. So I think there was a lot.
I didn't put a 72-hour countdown on the wall.
Oh my gosh, no. So ridiculous.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. But so I think that was one thing. But no, I was thinking about this idea of consent and how I was just thinking recently about this idea that like if it's not a yes in all of your bodies, so like your mind, your physical body, your emotional body, and like your soul, right? Like if it's not a yes on all of those levels, so if there's conflict or pressure in any of those levels, then maybe it should be a no. Yeah. And so those interactions, when you're talking about healthy sexuality between two people after something painful has happened, but I would say anytime, like this is just healthy sexuality in general.
Right.
Anytime you're going to engage in that area of life, it should be a mutually consensual experience that is a yes for the physical body, a yes for the emotional body, and a yes for the soul. And because that is going to be connecting, and that's going to be that give and take that you were talking about. Now, I will say there are, through the recovery process, it wasn't like that's the ideal, right? Like that's what we're trying to work towards. But there were times where we were approaching certain things as like a trauma exercise. And so we had to take sort of this idea that it was going to be this magical experience away from it and just do the exercise, because what I needed to do in that point, there was, I would say, trauma in my body and my emotional bodies, my physical body and my emotional bodies they needed proof that certain things were safe before I could get to that place where it was a full yes, and then we could engage with freedom and fun and just, flowing experience between the two of us. And so I guess what I'm saying is like when you have the whole experience, the free experience, the safe experience, the healed experience, we want it to be a yes everywhere. But what I knew was yes for me in that moment meant that we could move forward, but at any time that anything I felt conflicted, I could say no. And we were only doing certain things at certain times for certain purposes so that I could teach myself that it was safe. And you were very mentally, emotionally, and physically present for me in those moments to make sure that like it was a healing experience for me and that it was not selfish in any way. You were not taking, you were only helping me be present in that moment so that my body could get enough healing, so that my physical and emotional bodies could get enough healing, that we could get to the place where then we could engage in a mutual way. And when you're engaging in a mutual way, then it needs to be a yes on all of those levels. Does that make sense? Because I don't want to like contradict myself. I just want to make space for the fact that if there is a healing journey that needs to be had because of a traumatic way that your body responds to things, that's a separate conversation from when I'm saying, hey, yeah, we're just gonna like get together and have sex, or we're gonna get together and connect in this way. Like that, when we're talking about those things, that's one area. When we're talking about recovery, there are pieces to that need to be very carefully chosen to be safe, to create safety over time. And some people have more or less traumatic responses to that. And we have to be very, very respectful of that. Yeah,
I'm reading through the book that the Rapsmiths wrote, and you had them on the podcast, and we should link to the book again. But it talks about like, I think it's the healing pyramid. I may have said
the
that
intimacy
wrong.
pyramid.
Intimacy pyramid. But it's really cool because like the foundational stuff is things like safety, integrity, honesty, all of those things. So if you think about what as long and as difficult as our road was to recover, that was because my personal history was not one of relapse, and so that still took us a long time. So for those of you who are listening, understand that if you choose to relapse, and I understand maybe you haven't locked things down, you haven't, and things are different, and you're still trying to work through that each time that happens and it's out there, it's something that doesn't fully lock down that safety. And so, as you move into healthy sexuality, people respond, people desire when they feel safe or in the utmost way, right? I guess
we can say again,
sex, right?
Yeah, we can say again, and like we're talking about healthy sexuality. So we've also mentioned that there's hypersexuality and there's hyposexuality. And the way we were describing it earlier was sort of more of a hyposexual response, we're kind of shutting things down, create safety, build up again slowly. But sometimes when there's lack of safety, people will have a hypersexual response. I desire a sexual connection because my soul is really connecting that emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
And there's a false sense of connection that's created from the chemical cascade that comes from physical intimacy.
Right.
And so some people, their response to lack of safety is, well, let's try to get it from this thing, right? And there's nothing wrong with our responses. It's just awareness around them. Because if you think about pornography, it's very similar, right? I'm going to try to get this blank filled through this outlet, but then what happens is in the long run, it ends up being unfulfilling. Right. And so hypo and hypersexuality both are responses that our bodies and our brains and our emotions can have to lack of safety. And so again, we want to bring awareness to that, because when we can bring awareness, then we can make choices that bring us back into the middle where health lies.
Right.
And that's where there is consent, there is safety, there is that foundation of honesty, there is trust. All of those things exist, and then it becomes a mutual experience where it's just it's just a free flow kind of thing, and there's so much safety on both sides.
Right.
Yeah. So the list that I mentioned 30 minutes ago that I might read, just to reiterate, is healthy sexuality is respectful. So we could just stop there and say, like, are your sexual experiences with each other respectful? Would your partner feel respected by the choices you make?
I think that's the huge part, because what we're trying to do is occasionally, I always wondered, is somebody going to, as they're listening to this, is like, well, we like to do whatever, but we both enjoy it. Are you telling me that's not respectful? And I think that's the second thing that you listed. Say it again.
Would your partner feel respected by the choices you're making when you're engaging with them?
Right. So if it's very mutual and it's honest and it's agreed to,
yeah,
right.
But just to make sure that's not a verbal consent versus a mind, body, spirit consent.
Right. Yeah.
Those are different things.
Really, are you just saying yes because?
And so that's someone can say yes because they feel pressured, or if they don't say yes, they're gonna feel like, maybe their partner won't talk to them for a little while, or they might get upset, or they might feel like they're hurting their partner's feelings. Sometimes people say yes because they think that's what their partner wants, and even though they don't want it, right? So, so kind of coming back to that, will they feel respected by the choices you're making when you are engaging with them? Mm-hmm. Think about approaching them in a respectful way, and if you can't answer that question with a yes, then you really, really extra need to make sure that it's a mind, body, soul, spirit consent. Like, do you really is this something that you like? Is this something that you enjoy? Or do you feel pressured because you think that I like it? Or where are we at with this particular thing?
And I know with you, I feel like I'm so in tune to your emotions that I can tell if you're struggling, even though you may feel that you have consent. I can tell. It doesn't so much happen anymore, but I think when we were,
my brain goes to 10,000. It has a hard time focusing and being, during recovery, it had a hard time being present and calm.
Right. Yeah.
And so if I maybe was disconnected anyway, you'd be like, hey, everything okay? You doing good? Yeah. Or a lot of times I would have
to stop.
Yeah. Or I would have to say hey, I just need a minute. Cause my brain is it's gone to 10 different places and I need to, it needs to focus. Yeah. So that's been a process, but the more safety has been created, that's been easier for my brain to stay calm and present and focused. And healthy sexuality should be fun and exciting. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, you should laugh. You should have a good, it doesn't have to be, I think we have these ideas in our head, whether they're from whatever, books, fantasies, stories, porn, movies, whatever it is that we've been exposed to, where we think it's supposed to be this, I don't know, crazy. Healthy sexuality is fun. It's relaxing. It's silly. Things happen. Things don't happen.
Yep.
You can stop, you can start, you can laugh.
I think what you're trying to say is porn is a horrible teacher. It's an abusive teacher, and unfortunately, it really, unfortunately, in a lot of people's cases, my case, it's the only education you get, and so what do you do with that? And so, unfortunately, it really sends some bad messages.
Maybe just take a minute to imagine what would someone's what would a couple's sexual experience maybe look like if they had never been exposed to pornography or sexual images? Mm-hmm. You just be and don't if you have a problem with visualization, don't visualize this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying think about the concept of they'd probably be awkward. Right?
Yeah.
They'd probably be really goofy, maybe a little quiet, maybe a little silly. They'd probably talk about things, right? If there wasn't shame associated with it too, take the shame away, just an innocent encounter, right? They might think certain things were really fun or, oh, I didn't know that. They might be surprised, right? So bring that, it's bringing that innocence back into it because whether or not you've had a million sexual partners or one sexual partner, if you are with somebody now that you care about, you have to learn about that person. Because that person is not the other person you were with.
That's right.
And if porn is what you've learned sexuality from, I guarantee you it's not going to be what this person likes because they're not porn. They are a human being. Mm-hmm. And so we all, we're literally created. We're literally designed to want connection and intimacy. And that's where a lot of these things come out of in a negative way. I need affirmation. Okay, well, I'm going to go get this false sense of it over here, right? So we have this opportunity through sexuality to get these fulfilled in healthy ways when it is a healthy, committed, consensual, safe relationship.
Right.
And so when we're thinking about recovery, we're thinking about building this back up, we're thinking about, okay, well, what does that look like? Right? Like, so it should be fun. It should be exciting. It should be innocent. It should be free. It should be shame free. It should be, all of these things.
Yeah.
Victimless. So obviously, go back just up to the first one I said. Does your partner feel respected? Right? Because they can be a victim too, even if verbally they have said yes. So again, it's always checking in with like, do you actually feel good with this happening? Do you feel aligned and grounded and safe and loved with this? Or do you feel objectified? Do you feel used? Are you trying to are you doing something because you think I like it? Like, these are the conversations we should have after after addiction, after, recovery and trying to create something that's good. Intimate, right? What do we mean by intimate? Everybody goes sex. No. If you're listening, I know you didn't say sex because you know better than that. When you say intimate, what do you mean? Emotional intimacy.
That's right. Connection in some way. There's
this, it's not an acronym. I don't know what you would call this, but they say intimacy is into me, you see, right? Humans want to be seen. They want to be chosen. They want to be loved. They want to be valued. They want to be respected for who they are authentically. That's really important. Consent allows you to be authentic. Consent allows you to have agency. And then intimacy, when you have consent, allows you to actually be seen and loved and valued for who you are. And so we can't be faking our way through the process.
Right.
If we can, but if we are, it's not going to ultimately end up in a healthy connection. So we have to be real. And sometimes real means uncomfortable. And sometimes real means silly. And sometimes real means we stop. And sometimes real means we have a great time, And so, but we have to be checking in and making sure. And that builds intimacy and safety over time. Mutuality and needs expressed. So we're communicating again, like, I don't like this, or I do like this, or go over here, or don't do this, or go over, try that again, or I really like that, or, those sorts of things, or this is what I'd like to do, or how do you feel about that? Making sure that we're on the same page.
Well, I want to make sure I say this. It's okay for you to voice what you want to do. It's also okay for your partner to say, no, I don't want to do that.
No. Oh, that'll never be on the table.
Yeah, right. And that's really okay.
I would be careful. The little caveat I would put in here is, if you are recovering from a pornography addiction, if you ever say something like, if you ever consider asking your partner for a specific behavior or something like that, I would ask yourself first, where did I learn this? Because if you learned it through pornography, check if you feel like that's an actual healthy thing to ask for.
Yeah. Well, that's part of that awareness that you're developing through your journaling habit.
Yes. Journaling twice in this episode is not necessary, Patrick. But beyond that, there is a natural, I would say, quote unquote, imbalance during the recovery period, where it really mostly should be a lot of times. I won't say should, but like a lot of times may be the betrayed partner really trying to them sort of leading this area. Yeah. So it's probably not going to feel good for a lot of betrayed partners if they're addict partners. Like, can we do this? Can we do this? Because then they're immediately going to go, why? Because you learned that in porn, or why? Because like, can't you just like be present with me and just have boring sex? Can't or whatever you want to call it. But like, can't we just, can't we just connect? Right. So there is a time and a place for that kind of thing. I had to sort of lead based on my safety level for a really long time. And then you had to do enough healing that then the conversation could become a dialogue again in terms of, fun or whatever. But however you want to say that. But does that make sense? I want to make sure that we're not inviting.
No, absolutely. It's like, I think the nice thing about recovery or going through this recovery process is you can understand where your motivations are when you say something. Is it honoring or dishonoring? Is it, kind or unkind? Is it taking into account what the partner has asked you to do or asked you not to do? And so, I think, and here's the thing, you might make a mistake. You might think that there was a message sent that it was okay. And so just don't be afraid if you do make a mistake in that to go, hey, I'm really sorry. I misread this situation. It's okay.
Yeah, and then don't do it again.
Yeah, and then just
don't pressure them.
Right. Don't pressure them.
And if somebody, if you're on the receiving end of something and you don't like it, speak up right away.
That's right. Yeah.
100%. Like, make it known. And don't feel guilty about that. Don't feel embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
You should never.
I would even say if it seemed okay, but then later it hits you as not okay.
Talk about it.
Voice then, like don't feel like you missed it. If
yeah.
You didn't voice
100%.
Right.
Yeah, because sometimes people take a minute to process.
Yeah.
But over time you can get more and more in your body and going, wait a second, how do I feel like this? And if you need to stop at the moment, that's okay. But yeah, if you realize something afterward, because you should never, ever, 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 ever do anything sexually that you feel uncomfortable with, that you know that you're uncomfortable with.
That's right.
So never feel pressure or feel guilt or feel shame or feel embarrassment about like completely stopping the process or saying, hey, I'm really not into that. Or, hey, excuse me, stop. I told you stop. You know, like that's, make sure we need to make sure we verbalize. Trust is, with healthy sexuality, trust is foundational. Healthy sexuality is safe. I mean, that's the biggest thing. We're not going to have to question if I can say no. We're not going to have to question if I can interrupt, if I feel deeply safe with you, right? So these are foundational things that allow for joy and comfort and relaxation to be present in the sexual experience.
Right.
Like without safety, like we shouldn't even be engaging.
Yeah.
Like that shouldn't, that's a no. Safety has to be there first. Healthy sexuality serves to connect emotionally. We've talked a lot about that. Creates warmth and oneness. Deep. Now, the one thing I want to say with creates warmth and oneness, like I said earlier, sometimes people will unintentionally or unconsciously or subconsciously maybe use sexuality to connect. And I think that you have to be careful about that, because sometimes what I hear, like I even saw this video like on TikTok one time, and the guy was basically like, are you and your wife chipping away at each other, feeling a little frustrated? And his answer was like, me and my wife do. We look at each other and we go, when was the last time we had sex? Want to go right now? And then they have sex, and then all of a sudden they feel better. And that was his answer. And I'm like, okay, but tomorrow is that same conversation going to come up? And also, is that just a false sense of connection because you just basically bypassed the problem that you were having and then gave yourself a dopamine hit?
That's right.
Like a little bit of some, you gave yourself some endorphins, and so now you want to cuddle. And then, but are you going to pick that argument up again tomorrow?
Right.
Like, so we have to be careful with that. So when we're thinking about it creates warmth and oneness, yes, it does bring connection as long as these other things are already there. Like there is a level of safety and connection that should exist before we engage in this. And then that can build on it and can improve it and maybe can strengthen it in a lot of ways. But we can't use like our physical interactions to say, hey, this is what makes me feel connected to you. Because if that's the only thing making me feel connected to you, then that's a very clear demonstration that there's a lot of unhealth in other areas of the relationship.
In the book, the Rap Smiths talk about the term they use with each other when things are tough is they remind each other that they're on the same team. We're on the same team. We're on the same team. And so like if you think about that kind of, when things are getting chippy or you're not, you kind of, hey, we're on the same team. It's okay. And, so like his advice, if it's grounded in all of these levels of safety and we're always there for each other and we're always on the same team, and we have discovered as a couple that is something that we can use that helps us, and we both agree to it, and you know what I mean, like there's sometimes these snippets they don't take into account, maybe in that case it's a very, very healthy couple and they use that very, very well. I don't really know.
I cannot imagine a scenario where a couple is arguing and their answer to that is having sex, and that's healthy. Yeah. Like I just can't I guess I would need more explanation for how that could be a healthy response.
I guess my point is like on most of these things, it's like there are no silver bullets, right, to creating deep levels
because
of intimacy.
Then you have to think about that too. Because what are you doing when that's the answer? Is you're going, I need stress hormones. I'm amped up, and now I'm associating having sex with you with my stress response.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, it's a really good.
You know what I mean? So is that healthy?
Right, as opposed to relaxing.
So now I have to be mad at you in order to have a good sexual experience because I've locked that in. Now that's my brain pattern. So I'm going to pick fights with you in the future so that we can connect.
Wasn't that the whole makeup sex thing?
Yeah, that's my point. So I don't think that's healthy. So I would delete what Patrick just said.
Well, my point is
I know what you're. Yeah, I know.
I'm trying to say it's a big, broad spectrum, and the problem with the TikTok advice is,
hey, I'm on TikTok. TikTok advice is great.
But that,
no, it is. It's very. I do find that it is hard.
Yeah.
I have 90 seconds. You have 3 minutes, whatever.
Right.
You're talking about a topic, and I see people will comment. Why not about this? What about this? I'm like, I had 90 seconds to talk about something.
Right.
I'm not going to hit the 10,000 points that are, it's a complicated
you're not giving
topic.
A college lecture.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying.
Or a podcast.
But I will still hold to my point that I think that example is a bad one.
I would agree.
So yes, mutuality, consent, all of those things. But just I would even in that situation. I might journal
about it though.
You should.
I think I'm going to journal about it.
The outcome of your journaling will be that Kylene is always right.
Huh.
Isn't that usually
that escalated quickly?
It's usually correct. No, I just think that's always going to go back to the question, right? So if you use that same example, we feel better. Okay, well, that's great. But can you go back to what was the motivation? The motivation was to resolve a conflict as opposed to connection, right? So what is the motivation? And then does it work every time? Are you able to resolve conflicts in other ways? Mm-hmm. So you should never use sexuality. To me, that's a negative use.
Well, and part of it is,
and you're associating negativity with something that's supposed to be good.
Yeah, maybe, and completely hypothetical. Maybe what he didn't share was before they even get to the sex, they sit down and they talk it out.
He told the story. I'm telling you, that is not what happened. Yes. Patrick, just stop trying to defend this man and just agree with me. Okay, we're gonna have to delete this whole past 10 minutes. You're trying to defend this guy that has an unhealthy view of sexuality. So
don't follow that guy on.
Yeah, you're undermining your whole story of how healthy your sexual mentality is right now. No,
wow.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, I understand what you're saying though. It's people have a very short time, but no, it was a pretty clear message, and I felt like it was really negative.
Yeah. I didn't see it, by the way.
No.
Yeah.
Are you good with this?
We're gonna have to talk this out.
Delete all of that. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so we'll wrap this up. Healthy sexuality deepens values and beliefs. That's really important. What are the beliefs we have around sexuality? What are the beliefs we have around connection, around intimacy, around relationships, around safety, around morality, around ethics? You were talking about how horrible the porn industry is and how we learn toxicity really in relationship from that industry. So our behaviors come out of our value system. And so we have to think, what is it that we prioritize in our lives as important? And if our behaviors and our actions are antithesis to that, then we have some work to do.
Right.
And then we always have to come back to, what is my value system and what do I base that on? And and maybe my value system right now is a little different than the value system I want to live into. Let's get clear on that. Yeah. And then let's, set that vision. And then the last one is authentic. Healthy sexuality is authentic. So that, again, is from Sexual Integrity 101. Of that list that I read through there. But authenticity is so important. I think that goes back to everything we were talking about, right? Like agency and consent. And I'm gonna go back to that TikTok example because now it's in my brain. That connection of, it's like maybe there was a lot of consent there and they both agreed that they really, really like this, but are they questioning the fact that they really need to have sex when they are activated now?
Yeah.
For example, or like, are they able to connect when they just are feeling calm? Yeah. Are they able to, so I think that's important. Yeah. And because that's authenticity is going to feel more grounded.
Yeah. Well, and I was having a nice conversation with one of my really good friends. I think it was two weeks ago. And, we were talking about this and I really, with everything that I've learned, and I'm going to say what he and I both agreed to, was like, I really wish that I had discovered, sex with you, right? I really wish that I had, you could argue waited, whatever, right? Whatever that may be. But, what we're experiencing now in a healthy relationship that has gone through its ups and downs, but has learned how to be open and vulnerable and to cry and to have difficult conversations and to be uncomfortable. I really wish that that's what I had found at 16, you know what I mean? And so, but I also understand, and I want to extend grace to, obviously me as a little boy and all of us who go through life. Sometimes we just don't have that option. It's just not part of our life history. But the point is the healing pattern, the healing work, and all of those healthy things that you identified, that can be a part of our history. And so we can
choose that at any time. And I think once we know that it exists.
Yeah. We're not responsible for the things that happen to us that create the wounds in us, but we are responsible for learning how to process those wounds and then be able to show up in a way that is both beneficial to those around us and to us as individuals, and which in turn can translate into some very healthy, intimacy and sexuality and all of those things.
Yeah. Any other nuggets around healthy sexuality that you want to leave people with? No,
not today.
No, I think it's a good conversation, and I think to your point, it's important to have because we're all taught, you're saying, hey, I wish that I knew this, 30 years ago or whatever. And I think a lot of us would say that, even people that have not been exposed to pornography, or that do not have a porn addiction, but people that maybe were exposed to purity culture, or maybe had sex with people that they're like, oh, I wish I didn't whatever their experience was. We don't need to sit here and feel guilt about our past, because sometimes when we think that we've done something wrong in the sexual realm, we just carry that with us our whole life. Right. And I'm kind of like, I made choices. They were what they were. They're in the past. Yeah, I'm not going to carry that with me anymore, right? So we got to let that go. To include being an addict. At times, once you've reached a level of healing, you got to go, hey, I feel bad about how I hurt people. I will always feel bad that I hurt you, but I can't change it now. But can't live in that,
right? But what I can do is every day I can show up in a way that is more authentic and safe.
But you had to get to a place, yes, and you had to get to a place where you're actually in recovery, not just sobriety, before you could even contemplate sort of having that sort of feeling about it.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's important when you're saying, I wish that I felt this way or learned about sexuality in this way. Yes. And that's why we talk about it, because, we have Keegan, people listening, you have kids. There's another generation coming up that we've learned these things in our lives. And we were talking in the beginning about millennials versus Gen Z and the different conversations happening. Great. They're talking about consent. Maybe we can take it further and talk with our families and our kids. Before they get married, do you know what consent really means? Do you know how to have these conversations? Have you practiced having conversations with your fiance or with your boyfriend or with your girlfriend? Do you know how to talk about these things? Have you asked questions? Do you feel comfortable saying no to your partner? What does healthy sexuality look like? Maybe reading through that list with them and going, let's talk about what this looks like and feels like in terms of emotional safety with your partner, so that if something happens and you're uncomfortable with it, you don't hesitate. You don't hesitate to say something or have a conversation about it. Right. So that's why it's important to talk about, because we can continue to impact the next generation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we will see you next week. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.